Good morning, everyone. Boker Tov and Shabbat Shalom. This Shabbat has a special name. It's called Shabbat Hagadol, the Great Shabbos. The Shabbat before Passover is always called the Great Shabbat, which marks the beginning of the final preparations for the holiday of Passover. And what do we do this week? We get ready for Pesach, and there's a lot of preparations. We have to rid the home of all the chametz and bring in all the matzah and the Passover foods that we need for the Seder plate and make all the preparations for the Seder night, which will be this coming, not this Saturday night, but a week from this Saturday night. And we spend a great deal of time cleaning the house in preparation for Bedikat Chametz, the search of the Chametz, which will be on Thursday night, to look in every corner and crevice to make sure that there's no crumbs, no bread, no food items that are not kosher for Passover in the home. And many times people look at this as a monotonous type of a job. All week we have to go through all the rooms and clean up and prepare for Passover. But what is the connection between the main exercise of preparing for Passover and the theme of the holiday, which is redemption? And a rabbi by the name of Rabbi Shlomo Wolbe explains as follows. He says, what is redemption? Redemption is when you are not in a state of exile. Exile is the opposite of redemption. What does it mean to be in exile? The definition of exile is that you're not in the proper place where you belong. So for example, when the Jewish people are exiled from their homeland, we are not where we're intended and meant to be. When you think about the 59 hostages that are in Gaza, they're in a state of exile. They're not where they belong. They belong with their families around the Passover Seder, not in Gaza. But there are many other forms of exile. Take, for example, a person who's working in a job that's not suited for them. They're not where they're meant to be, and therefore they're experiencing a state of exile. And leaving and finding something that is suited for them is a redemption for them. Think about a person who's not married and they're still living with their parents, and they're trying to find their soulmate to start their life. Once again, they're in a state of exile. They're not where they're meant to be. Think about a teenager who doesn't fit in school. And they're in a state of exile because they don't feel they are where they belong, where they meant and intended to be. But on a more spiritual level, there's something called Galut Hadat, which means exile of the mind, which is when your thoughts are not where they're meant to be, where you're obsessing or worrying or having improper thoughts, and you know my thoughts should not be there. My thoughts are in exile. Or my emotions are in exile. I don't want to be envious. I don't want to be in a state of anger. And therefore, the key to life is redemption, being where you are intended to be. And that's exactly what cleaning for Passover is. What is cleaning? You go through the house and you realize there are so many things that they're not where they're meant to be. And you have to restore them to their proper place. And that is the redemption. And therefore, as you go through the cleaning process, you can think about your personal life. What is not where it's meant to be? What do I need to put in its proper place? But furthermore, sometimes when we go through our things, we realize that there are some things that are not supposed to be in our life. They're meant to be thrown out. There are many things on Passover that we get rid of. And we say, this belongs in the garbage can. And that's the proper place. It's cluttering my house. I don't need it. And there are things in our life we have to look at and say, I have no room for this in my life. I need to eliminate it. It's just holding me back. It's just cluttering my life. And then there are sometimes you find things in your house that you're no longer using or no longer need, like clothing that your children grew out of. And you say, you know what, who can I give this to that could use this, that could appreciate this? And you give it to a friend or to a neighbor. And once again, it's redemption of that physical object, because until now it was in the wrong place. It wasn't being utilized. Now someone is benefiting from it. And so cleaning for Passover is not just a mundane chore. It's a spiritual homework and exercise for each and every one of us to examine our lives and say, are things where they're meant to be, where they're supposed to be? And if not, how can I rearrange it? How can I put things in order? And that's the name of the word when we sit down next Saturday night, the Seder, the order, to make sure everything is where it's meant to be. There's a story about this boy. His name was Shmuley. He couldn't focus on his studies. He had ADHD. He was always getting into trouble. And the teachers knew he wasn't able to focus. One year he got a new teacher that was very strict. And he kept on reprimanding him for not studying. And one day he called him into the principal's office and called his father to the office and said, your son Shmuel is not learning, he's wasting his time. And then right in front of the boy and his father and the principal, he said, if he doesn't start using his head, he's going to grow up to be a nothing in life. This went like a dagger in Shmuel's heart. It broke him in front of his father, in front of the principal, to be told he's going to be a nothing if he doesn't start using his head. Well, many years later, this young boy got married, started a family, and he was a fine person, but he did have, ADHD. He wasn't meant to sit at a desk, and so he got a job as a plumber, but he volunteered as a Hatzalah member. He loved running on calls and saving lives and helping people. One night, in the middle of the night, his phone rings, gets a Hatzalah call. He runs to a local home, and there was a man passed out. He had a heart attack. He resuscitates him, calls the ambulance. They take him off, and they save his life. A few weeks later, the family calls him and says, we can't thank you enough for saving our father's life. We're having a festive meal for the family to thank God for his miraculous salvation. You're the one who saved him. We want you to come. Shmuel comes to the party. When he walks in, the man wasn't in his pajamas, white on the floor. He was sitting there, this rabbi with a white beard, and he recognized him. He was his teacher from 3rd grade who reprimanded him and told him he's going to be a nothing. Shmuel asked him if he could step aside into another room. And he said, do you remember me? And he said, no. And he reminded him of the entire story. The rabbi started to cry. He said, I feel so terrible. And he said, it's okay. I'm just telling you in the future to be sensitive to children's feelings. The rabbi said, how can I make this up to you? And then the rabbi said, come with me. And he stepped back into the living room where the whole family was gathering. And he proceeded to tell the story to all the guests, how this Hatzalah volunteer was his 3rd grade student, and he wouldn't study. And he once called him into the office, and he said to his father and the principal, if your son Shmuel doesn't start learning and using his head, he's going to grow up to be a nothing. And then the rabbi said to everyone in the room, little did I realize that Shmuel was not intended to use his head in life. He was intended by God and put in this world to use his hands, the same hands that resuscitated me when I was passed out on the floor and saved my life. Every person has their mission. That's the name of this week's Torah portion, Vayikra. Everyone has their calling. And when we put ourselves in the right place where we belong, and we're doing what we're meant to be, that is redemption. That is freedom. Have a wonderful Shabbat Hagadol.